You can ride the rails in many countries and in many corners of this country, but as any self respecting train spotter on Vancouver Island will tell you, you cannot go for a ride on the ENN Railway. Passenger travel stopped more than a decade ago, with some freight traffic crawling along slowly afterwards due to the poor rail conditions. But the dream of a refurbished ENN railway is not dead yet. Just ask Warren Scalroot. The Shawnigan Lake resident has organized a petition that's got more than 10,000 signatures that calls on the federal government to make a significant investment in modernizing both passenger and cargo rail services here on the island. The petition was tabled last week in the House of Commons by MP Alistair McGregor, and Warren joins us from Shawnigan Lake to tell us more about why this is important to him and what he hopes happens. Warren, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Before we get to the petition, can you give us your pitch? Why do you think we should bring back and refurbish rail on Vancouver Island?
Well, I work on priorities. It's the way I kind of look at the entire thing. So, I mean, there's the passenger piece, there's the freight piece, but as we've seen with the Cameron Lake fires, the Malahat closures, that we have no redundancy on Vancouver Island for transportation at all. So if the highway shut down, that impacts people's appointments, their connections. It impacts the economy because, things are trying to move along those highways. A lot of freight is on trucks. Well, all of the freight is on trucks these days, other than the propane and Nanaimo. So for me, my priorities are that. So to create redundancy, also to move the trucks, some of the trucks off of the main highway. So the super heavy trucks, they cause about 634 times the damage to the road surface than a sedan does. There's formulas for looking that up. So if we can move a bunch of those off, that also clears up the highways, which are already jamming up during the morning and evening commutes. So if we can start moving those off onto the rails, also, the island has tried buses over and over, like a solely bus, based solution on the island for years, and it keeps failing, right? So, we've got private, bus services coming in to try to fill the gaps. But here we have this railway that goes all the way from Courtenay, through Nanaimo, Parksville, Duncan, Esquimalt, Victoria, also out to Port Alberni. That runs on its own right of way. The trains would only stop at stations, so there's no, it's not a million stops along the way. It's just terminal to terminal to terminal. And being a right of way, it goes before the cars and everybody else goes. So in my mind, if you create a transit network, a multimodal transit network that's based on a train with connecting buses and also the trails that are beside the rails. So now you've got a feeder for active transportation because, like ICF has said, they want trains that can carry bikes.
And what about the cost of it? Do you have any idea how much it would cost to rehabilitate the rail corridor and have it up and running again?
Yeah, so the BC government did an analysis of the entire railway. They contracted that out to an independent contractor. That created a file of what the cost would be to repair the bridges, trestles, tracks, and the whole bit. ICF then took that information and worked with the Southern Rail of Vancouver Island, which is their operator, to create a business case, and they costed it at $431 million to do it. And now that's just for the rails and everything in the place that it's in now, right? You'll notice that my petition is for $1 billion. That's for several reasons. One, in the First Nations engagement document, they talked about wanting some row moves, possible land swaps, some water mitigation and that sort of thing. That all costs money. If you have to acquire land in exchange, or if you have to move the row, that's extra money. So I bolstered it up. Also, I've noticed that, time and time again, people are like, electrify it. And electrification, although it was looked at, modicumly, costs quite a bit more. It's about $1 million to $2 million per kilometer to add the overhead infrastructure for the electrical components. So to me, if we want to do this right and actually have this multimodal transit network, we need to start off with our railway as a backbone.
Now, Alistair McGregor tabled the petition in the House of Commons last week with more than 7,000 signatures. What do you think? Is the federal government going to be interested in this? Have you heard any indication that they'd be willing to make this kind of investment?
I've not heard much at all from the federal government. And when I inquired with Pablo Rodriguez there, he's our Minister of Transportation, the email I got back is refer to the province for it, right? Now, this isn't just, a provincial issue. Maybe it would be if there was no reconciliation component. It would be just BC, but it's not. It has this reconciliation piece. And from what I'm hearing, like they're not taking that reconciliation piece seriously. And I've heard this from like a multitude of people, and that's just wrong in today's day and age. There's the partnerships with First Nations are building some amazing things, and they're also part owners, right? So the 14 First Nations are part owners of the railway now. They got it from CPR and Rail America back in 2005. So they're all owners. It's directed by half First Nations and half regional districts. I cannot help but think that they actually want rail, but with some caveats, right? Some accommodations to make it work.
And so your point's well taken. The federal government is essentially brushing this off, or kind of diverting it to the province. Do you think the provincial government could take the lead here? Nonetheless, that's not to say have no involvement on the federal government, but could the provincial government get things going here if it were going to be fully refurbished?
Well, they are actually. So I don't know if you're aware, but they funded $18 million to the First Nations and regional districts to establish a final vision for the railway. So there's 4 working groups that have been set up from that. One is from Victoria to Langford, Langford to Parksville, Parksville to Courtenay, and Parksville to Port Alberni. And I've noticed now that the ICF is hiring a corridor project manager, so I can't, I kind of have a funny feeling they've got some funding too. And also, I don't know if you've noticed the heavy rail equipment moving around, giving the railway a shave and a haircut and managing the rockfall, but they're doing the entire 289-kilometer rail corridor. So I think the BC government is actively involved in trying to make this happen. I'm not sure if they can do that without that reconciliation piece, because that is a nation to nation discussion.
But are you confident they're refurbishing it and doing work on the corridor for it to be fully rail equipped? Is that do you sense that being a goal for them? Because we're hearing from other groups who say keep the corridor, but give up on rail. We'll use it for other things, recreational trails and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. So while the ICF is the owner of the railway and has a constitution to restore rail and trails, I'm going to continue to support that vision. They already approved trails alongside the railway. They're already aware of the trail idea of converting the entire thing to a trail, which would be a monumental cost with nothing but maintenance fees on our taxes in order to do that, because the rails would have to come up, all the ties would have to come up, the rail bed, remediated, and who's going to bear the cost of that? It's going to be the taxpayer, and we're going to get nothing for it other than this massive trail that we already have, like the Trans-Canada Trail, for example, right?
So are you optimistic? Do you think that with federal support, do you think the federal support could be achieved, and could you see rail returning in a meaningful way, both for passenger and freight?
I can, and I really hope it does, because in terms of infrastructure investment, Vancouver Island over the last few decades has really been underinvested in, right? Like, yeah, we got the Mackenzie interchange, and we got the Highway 19 improvements, which are just back to the way they were before the construction started anyway. But I'm confident that with all the regional districts on board, if they can get the final vision with First Nations done, then I don't think there's any way the federal government can say no at that point. So the level of detail they must be going at in those working groups, I can't see that much work being done to turn it into a trail. It wouldn't take 4 working groups and a corridor project manager and everything else just to turn it into a trail, because really, it's a simple act to remove the rails, and like it's a big job to remove the rails and the ties and everything else. But it's a pretty simple process, right? So I can't help but think that there's a lot more going on than we can see. So,
well, Warren, thanks for joining us. It's good to hear about this from you, and thanks for taking our call on the radio.
all right, thank you very much.